Good evening. We're here this evening. We're going to start the meeting with the acceptance of a donation, RSA 198:20-B. Did you want to start?
Sure. So actually, I'm going to introduce Principal Thompson and actually, I don't even know your title, PTO President. Outstanding, Heidi Ames. And so they're going to talk about the GMS Playground Committee and a donation for the playground.
Yes, we are. As I'm sure most of you are familiar with, the Griffin Memorial School PTO started a fundraiser. This was our second year this year, called Raise Craze, started by our very own Tina Harrison at the school to raise funds for our school, and it has been wildly successful. Last year we raised approximately $21,000. This year approximately $20,000 for our school. With that money, initially with last year's money, we decided we wanted to create a playground committee to investigate ways to improve the school's playground equipment, specifically with an eye towards use in the winter time, because a lot of times some of the playground equipment is off limits for the kids. And so how can we spruce that up? We did look into different types of, what's the material? The wood chips or
the
mulch. Ended up with a price tag of around $72,000, which wasn't quite achievable for us. However, the playground committee was made up of, and I want to make sure I give credit to every person who worked on this, which was Mr. Thompson, Assistant Principal Maura Clinton-Jones, Kerry Douglas, Kathleen Follis, our PE teacher, Melissa Grisone, the school nurse, Susan Seabrook, Jenny Pelletier, who's also a paraprofessional as well as a parent, Chris Burns, who was a parent, and then it was chaired by Andrew Cutter, who is a parent as well, previously serving, I think, on the budget committee at one point. And so through that, they did research. They spoke to the fourth grade. They collected information, and the summary of it, if you want to go to the last slide, just so I can summarize it and let you know what we're doing and then what it would look like. The goal is to put in a new set of swing sets that'll be a second 8-bay swing set. It is to put in a shade structure. A lot of times during the summer months, the warm months, the kids are overheated and hot, and they're all huddled around the slide structure trying to get shade underneath. So this would involve a shade structure, and then the tunnels. There's some moving tunnels that are connected. It'd be a set of 3 tunnels that it's not one long tunnel. There's broken up in the middle of it, so there can be proper supervision on the playground, and kids cannot be huddling inside said tunnels that would go, and that could potentially be usable during the winter months. We also investigated a gaga pit, a seesaw, as well as doing a smaller 6-bay swing set instead. But the playground committee and then ultimately the PTO, which voted on this, felt like an 8. There's always a line for the swings. The kids always want more swings. So in total, the gift would be for the actual items, along with the estimate for site work that we received from DLB Paving, be approximately $19,780.60. We additionally approved another $2,000 as a buffer. So if the site work or for some reason something is a little bit more, nothing usually comes in on budget, there is a buffer that's built in. So the total gift we would like to submit to the school board for approval is up to $21,780.60. If you want to go to the slide with the map, do you mind if I stand up? And
That's great.
so this is the playground. Looking at it from the basketball courts, looking at the playground. And so this is the structure here. We have a current set of swing sets over here. What we're looking to do, the kindergarten portables are on this side, is put a shade structure right on this bottom corner. It's like a large umbrella. It would be obviously cemented deeply into the ground, but it would provide shade. It'd have room for a picnic table. Last year, the PTO did donate 4 tables to Griffin, so those can be portable and brought outside if someone wanted to have an activity out there, or it could just be for kids to literally sit and get shade. We are looking at the moving tunnel area being right when you walk into the playground over here, and then we would be expanding the swing set area, so it would result in additional playground. So the site work would involve, there's a sidewalk that goes around the perimeter of the playground. to make it accessible for anyone with a wheelchair or scooter of some kind. And so we would expand that, put the wood chips so it would be sufficient for the necessary fall height for the swing set over in this area, which is all current grassy area. So that is what we would consider phase one of our plan. We do plan to do raise craze again in the fall. The hope is that we do raise another $20,000. And if that's the case, we would work on phase two, which would certainly lead into, there was a lot of positive feedback for the Gaga pit, as well as perhaps into some other types of structures for the playground.
You have a picture by any chance of the umbrella?
I
With the shade?
do, if it came out.
That actually looks
It's in the
okay.
thing. I'm sorry.
Did that one come out okay?
Heidi, is that what you?
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yep, so it comes out and can move. The good thing is it does come down during the winter months, so it wouldn't collect snow. We could put it up there springtime whenever we felt like it was appropriate to put it up, leave it during the summer, and then take it down. We have our choice of colors and whatnot, which we don't care, but we can coordinate what the school's looking for in terms of coloring.
Does it have the dimensions on it?
I think it's 12 by 12. I was trying to see if I could see that.
Underneath the, I believe it was the 12 by 12.
It says 12.01.
Volume.
It's like cubic
Cubic
feet, isn't it? Makes sense.
I can certainly get that information for you.
I'm just curious how big
Yeah.
it is, that's all.
Yeah. So the
How
thought
about
process was, if you go back to the
16 by 16 by
16 by
8.
16,
Yeah.
was to put perhaps a second one as well into the back. But we wanted to see how well this was used first. If this is used well and people are using it, did you say
It
16?
does say 16.
16 by 16. So if it is used well and there's a good response to it towards the back of the map on that playground structure, we could put a second one.
Awesome.
What is the moving tunnel area? I'm not sure.
Crawl tubes, does that come through as well?
There's a picture of
Yeah.
it. They don't move, they're stationary,
They
but
are
it's not one
stationary.
big long
The
tube,
kids
so
move.
kids won't get,
So when we say
Hide out
moving
in there.
tunnel, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
a little bit dark, so you can see it's sort of broken up into 3 sections. We had a great discussion with our, what is she, our rep from,
From Primex.
came out and met with us
Yeah.
just to talk about insurance coverage and
Yeah.
whatnot. So we talked about kids being up top versus kids being inside and how that will be monitored and whatnot, but.
So they can play on top of that in the winter?
Well, that is something we discussed. We think that's probably not a great idea because there's also a fall zone, but they can go through it, which is, if that's the intention. So this is the one piece, the swing's not. But this one does address having another activity to do in the winter. It's on the foreground of the playground with the intention that it could remain accessible. That's the hope. The swings, there's actually a pretty high fall zone
Right.
requirement for swings. But that goes more to what the kids want as opposed to the winter need.
I just know watching children in one of those tunnels, they spend more time on top than they do inside.
so you're not gonna let them play on top in the winter?
Well, we're going to have to see, I guess, what the
Okay.
conditions are. I mean, we went out today and looked at the hill, trying to determine if it was too icy for the kids to go sliding. Because when we have 3 or 4 kids who come in because their sled is stopped, but they didn't, and they scrape up their
Road
face.
rash, yeah.
Yeah, then we, have to say that's probably not such a great idea. So it's possible they can do that,
Again, and the goal with second phase would be the Gaga pit would be another one that the kids would be able to use during the winter months, playing whatever games they want to play in there.
Would that be where the soccer field thing is now, or is it close?
It doesn't go that far
Oh,
over.
okay.
There's,
I was just
believe it or
curious.
not, there's more grassy area than I even believe.
Yeah, yeah.
You think of the swing set being right there, but there's actually a fair amount of grassy area that we had to move over, so without an issue.
Are you gonna take down the
Sports
board
teams
thing?
use that area.
That's-
There's a wall there.
we're not
right?
going near
Okay.
that at all.
Cause I thought I
But
saw that
mind
somewhere.
Going back to the diagram of the playground.
The overall? Yep.
So the moving tunnel area that's the bottom of that is the walkway where the benches are. So it's right towards the front.
So when you mapped out the second swing set,
Yeah.
did you locate the markers for the soccer field?
So it goes out only 32 feet, which is not very far into that field at all. So
But the end of the field, the corner of the field is almost right at the cusp of where the hill starts.
so we didn't mark that out, to answer your question.
But there are I'm saying there are markers there for the soccer field.
Yeah, I'm not.
There are now?
I put them there.
I didn't
The-
do that part.
Yeah.
The pavement extends, the paved area
Yeah.
of the playground extends beyond the playground area. So this is really kind of filling in the corner, the open.
I would think anyway, when you walked us through, the soccer field was there marked off.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm
this was
assuming.
marked, I mean, the playground committee went through and marked it. They took measurements. This was looked over with Dave Ross. So
Yeah.
we did try to take into consideration all the different activities
Yeah.
that are out there. I can't personally, I didn't walk it myself, so I can't say for certain, but I believe they would have taken.
Heidi, when you're having all the site work done, do you think they could fix the benches that are like this?
We talked about that.
'Cause I don't know anyone that can sit in that,
No
but
one
your feet are
understands
up in
them.
the air.
No one understands why and how you get back out of the benches once you're
Were
in
they
them.
supposed to be like that? They were before my time.
That's before my time as well. I have no idea. I can tell you though, sitting on those benches, 9 months pregnant, you were not able to get out of the seats. So we would like to have that if we can level them
Yeah,
out.
that'll
If it's
be
a
awesome.
matter of shifting and they just shifted, or if
When
it's
they
a
have the
matter of they
equipment there.
actually were intentionally
Could be an
built that way.
exercise apparatus too.
Well, I think Kathleen was on the original playground committee, wasn't she?
She was,
Balls.
yeah.
Yeah.
She
I'm
knows.
sure they're benches. Maybe they're like troughs to keep the balls.
Oh, maybe.
We did have some discussion about it, and there is some concern about damaging the benches. When we put in the new kindergarten modular unit, there was a basketball hoop at that end of the playground. And we tried to save it with the idea of moving it, but by the time they dug it out, it was damaged. And that was a, 6-inch steel pipe. So that's the concern.
Am I the only one who doesn't know what a gaga pit?
It's basically,
Camps have them.
yeah, it's a pen.
Nature's
I think it's a
classroom.
hexagon shape.
Yes, it is.
Pen that the kids can essentially play. I don't want to say it's dodgeball, but it's a version of knees at the wall that they try and tag the other side to be out, essentially. It's a game they can play with the ball, which is nice.
Love it.
They played at Nature's
It
Classroom.
kind of reminds me of Foursquare.
Yeah.
A different version of Foursquare. I don't know.
I think it's a combination of several games.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter. You put a bunch of kids in a pit with a ball.
pretty much.
Oh,
They entertain
right.
themselves, right?
I think it's awesome.
It is. That's bad.
I'm thrilled. So do we have to vote to accept this money?
So in terms of, I guess, logistics, what we would do if the gift was approved is we'd work with Corey to get the check over to you guys, and then we could work with the vendors to get the equipment installed and discuss a timeline for getting it installed. Personally speaking, and on behalf of the PTO, we do want this installed as soon as possible. Obviously, we understand the ground thawing is a huge issue. But the thought process is we did have some fourth graders that spent a lot of time, and as third graders and now fourth graders, raising money, and we would like them to be able to have some usage of that equipment. I understand that we're going to have to talk about scheduling and whatnot, and hopefully it wouldn't take up too much playground time with it having to be shut down while they did this work. But certainly we're willing to work to see what timing works for everybody, but we would like to get it installed as soon as the ground thaws, or as soon as possible.
And has DLB given you a time frame how long it would take to accomplish this?
No, because we are working with the vendors as well. So they are actually going to be coming in.
It's Pettinelli Associates. They're the ones who installed the original.
Yeah, they do that in no time.
I figure it's going to be
It's gonna
fairly
be, right, it'll
quick.
be the site work and everything else. It'll take the time and
Yeah.
DLB is pretty efficient. Everything we've ever had them do
Yeah.
on site is they move pretty quick.
Are you talking a couple of weeks or? you know?
I can't imagine it'd be more than a week. But I'm
Okay.
totally guessing. It's not my forte, but for the work that needs to be done, there would obviously need to be the wood chips installed. They have to dig up, do the pavement around, get the swings installed. The shade structure has to be installed pretty deep. We obviously want it to be very safe. So we're hoping maybe that Pettinelli will also, the moving tunnel area is a different company. The swing and the swings are from Pettinelli.
Yes, and
And the shade
yeah.
structure. So we wanted to talk with them about maybe them also installing the crawling, the moving tunnels. Maybe they can do that at the same time.
And you know how long the time frame is as far as for shipping, once you order?
We don't have that yet.
No, we don't. We haven't really done a lot with time frame pending approval and.
I'm just wondering, because my thought was, I mean, if the weather was good enough, that doing it during April vacation, that way it's taking
I
no
would
time,
love to do
it'd
that.
be no time away from, playing on a park.
It would be ideal. I know that Mr. Ross said he can't manage it at that week. So I did talk to him about that.
Did you mention a phase 2? Like some of this going to be?
So all of this part, the 8-bay swing set, the shade structure, and the moving tunnels is what we consider phase 1, which is what this gift is for. The other research that was done was the Gaga Pit, a smaller 6-bay swing set, although I'm not sure where we'd fit that with 2 8-bay. So I think that one kind of is replaced with it was a either or option for that, as well as another shade structure. We also did look at the seesaw, but the concern with the seesaw was one, it would only be a single seesaw, and so 2 kids using it wouldn't quite have as much usage as we'd want. And then 2, it also probably would not be able to be used during the winter months. So we're trying to be creative in some of the things that we can come up with that would be able to be used during those, roughly November to April.
So phase 1 is the swing sets, the crawl structure, and the
The
shade.
shade. That's the goal.
Did Primex give you like a height requirement as far as a fall level that they
Yes.
want to avoid?
It's different for the swing set.
Well, swing set I can see. I mean, you're
Yeah.
flying out there, but I'm thinking like a seesaw
Yes, so every piece of equipment
is
has its
different.
own specifications, and I have a 180-page handbook with, it's from I believe we got it from Primex, and it has the standards. So for example, for the swings, the clearance that you need between the swings and any other structure is twice the height of the distance between the pole and the seat. So twice in front and twice in back. So if you have an 8-foot, it has to have 32 feet of clearance each side. So we have looked at all of that and tried to figure it out.
Yeah.
And as Heidi mentioned, we met with Monica from the insurers just to, get some guidance from them.
Are they anticipating the insurance to go up?
Yeah, that would be.
No.
Okay.
You don't have any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the donation from the GMS PTO up to $21,780.60
I second that motion.
Sounds right.
for the playground.
Yes,
And improvements. In addition-
phase 1.
Phase 1.
I like it.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Thank you very much for your generous donation.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting it.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Kids love a blast with it.
Just a few years ago, it was condemned. Remember that?
Yeah.
A long way.
I know, right, yes. The old one.
I think it'll be exciting for the kids too to see what kindness can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spreading
To bringing it all
That's
back.
right.
Full circle.
Should have a little plaque.
Having
made up
gone
of
through like
That's right,
20
playground
umbrellas
that
in my
kindness
yard,
felt.
the lighter the better.
Yeah.
I'd go through like one every other year because I don't like faded stuff.
Yeah.
Great
Right.
job.
that. Well, that'll close the public hearing and we'll start out a public session. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. we have any revisions this evening?
We do not.
Summary of non-public actions from February 6, 2019. Mr. Myers made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of January 23rd, 2019. Mrs. McDonald second. The motion carried 401 with Mrs. Hirschberger abstaining. Bring us to correspondence. If there were any.
Nope.
Superintendent comments.
So a couple of things. I have a link there and I want to explain the diagram. I was just thinking after the deliberative session, I personally felt like it was very hard to see the screen. And we put a ton of time into developing the PowerPoint. And I think the PowerPoint did a really good job explaining to the public what we were trying to do. But with that backdrop, and it's a dark brownish color, it really was not the best setup. So
We've done something different in the past, and I'm not sure if it was those white things.
Yeah,
that-
it was the shell, but it's still further back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and
and we've
harder
done
to
it
see.
with the screen down. People bump into the screen
Okay.
and things like that, so.
So Michelle and I went in on Monday morning and I said, let's talk. What can we do in here? How could we set this up differently? And just so the board knows, the projector screen is actually forward on the stage. So sort of when you shut the curtains, the projector screen comes down right about at that point. So really the only way to utilize the existing projector screen and to get it sort of forward on the stage so people in the audience can see it, it would involve moving people off the stage. We have so many people up there. So
Into the pit.
Into the pit. So if you look at this diagram, picture the box at the top as the stage, right? So we thought if we left the moderator and the podium on one side, and then the clerk and legal could be over by the moderator, so they could give him advice, things that need to be, et cetera. And then on the other side of the stage would be sort of the speaking podium. And really the school board chair and the budget committee chair are the ones who do most of the work. I mean, most of the talking, right? So they would have a table up there on that side so that they could then operate and get to the mic. And then the concept is that we put two tables down in the pit and, it's like church. Nobody was in the front row. So we could literally push those tables right up against that row and not worry about taking up some seats. And we could have the budget committee and the rest of the school board on the floor. And then if, like the other day, Tina went up to do a presentation, she could go up to the podium to make that presentation. The other thought is that I've asked Jason to look at getting a better projector setup in there. So the cart was really kind of unwieldy and awkward. It was in the middle. It was creating a distraction. And so we're going to look at having a projector that we can tap into a little bit more easily.
There isn't one in there?
There's not one built into the ceiling. There was the one on the cart that was by the podium.
Yeah.
And I sort of sat in front of it.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is I talked to Michelle that I want to be able to drive from my computer. I figured out my use in that meeting would have been a good driver of things. I didn't have a lot to say, but I could certainly be flipping. And
That was very helpful for my presentation too.
and so we'll just be set up to do that next year. So that's a concept. We then toyed with, do we even need to have the rest of the board and the budget committee facing the audience? Or could they just eliminate those tables and have them sit in the front row? So when they're recognized by
I think I
Brian,
prefer that so I could see the presentation too.
When I saw it, that was my first, why do we need the tables there? If we talk, we can go to the microphone, or if we're scheduled, go up on stage.
Right.
Myself.
and when Brian and Cindy introduced the board and committee,
Stand turn.
stand, turn, wave, and then really, you're watching for the most part unless you want to speak. So
Could I just add, is that something it's a fairly nice auditorium that we don't have a dedicated projector mounted in there somewhere. Seems kind of silly. Is that something?
I wouldn't think
something
it'd
we
be
could-
too expensive to do.
when you do a large space like that, you have to have the right projector. So there's a high lumen one that really projects with quite a bit of light. So they're a little bit more expensive than a regular classroom one, but it's probably worth spending to make sure that we have it there and it's integrated in.
Right.
I asked Jason to look at, they have what's called a short throw. So it's sort of, where do we have it? In the other board, when we meet at the school, it's like mounted on the wall and it sort of sends the signal down. So you could have something that's actually up behind the curtains.
It
that
would
could
be
do that.
used, like even,
Yeah.
God forbid, it's an indoor graduation. They have people sitting in there and they would,
Yeah.
that would
Live stream it.
live stream.
I'm sure they could find a lot more uses for it too.
Oh,
Once you have
absolutely.
Well, just
Opening day.
everything, award ceremonies, things like
Mhm.
that.
If
theater.
I-
you know?
Honestly, that was the first time those two meetings last week I've never really noticed before. I think sitting on the stage is how I noticed that there's no projector projecting. It's just on a little card.
I got looking at the card afterwards, and there's a VCR player on it. I mean, it's like it's the way it's been set up for a
Oh,
while,
boy.
and so I think it's time to revisit that. But we'll get to it one thing at a
And
time.
it seems like every single year, it's the exact same thing. Right when you're ready to do a presentation, it doesn't work. I don't know why, but it never works. And where would Michelle sit, out of curiosity?
So the clerk and legal
Oh,
would be
clerk.
over by the moderator. The only piece is that sometimes you need legal, or they're kind of across the stage. So, but I thought.
Which is fine. I mean, 'cause it's so cumbersome right now. You go from,
All right.
especially when we're doing the presentation, that school's always way over on the left-hand side. We have to, this time, we used to go right to the middle. That's where the mic was last time. Now it's like they moved it over to the other side. So you're crossing both tables.
Mhm.
And then you're crossing the projector lamp too, that like blinds you for a moment or two before you get to
I
the
just
mic.
never liked the feeling that we're way, way back on the stage and not part of the community.
Right.
Like I like this setup. It just feels like more of a meeting than a, display, the school board show.
I like to
You know?
see people speaking when they're at the mics, and I couldn't see anybody speaking.
Right. You're right.
And if we shoot for the projector, a year from now, you can just push those tables together in the middle. The projector will shoot over them. So.
Well, the other thing you could do too with the projector is you could project the person who's speaking while they're speaking. So the people in the back could see you even bigger.
Whoa.
Just saying.
I don't know.
Slow down there, Brian.
Hard
We
to
got to
get
get rid of the VCR first.
it's hard to get it to that VHS tape and then live.
Yeah.
So generally, you like the idea of doing this, and I'm still a little bit unclear. Whose meeting is this? Is it ours to set up? Is it?
School district. The town has theirs,
So this is.
school district has theirs.
They
So
probably
we have
have-
the ability to
do you have to
decide
clear
the
it?
setup.
Do you have to
Okay.
clear it with the moderator maybe? Maybe that'd be the only.
I think he would actually appreciate that. I
As
think it
long
would be
as
easier.
he has access to the clerk and what he needs to have access to, he's fine.
So we're going to drop this in a note file for sometime in February of 2020. We'll eliminate those two tables, and we'll try to go without people, sitting on display, if you would, and see if we can make it work.
Cool.
Thank you.
That'd be the primary, right?
So the next thing I have for you is Alice implementation. So as you know, saving a view, we had Alice training back in September. And we have finally been able to meet with police, fire, sort of plot out what the next steps are. So I want to share with the board a few things. And I took a liberty that I want to share with the board too, because you can tell me, don't do this. And it really is about our timeline. So if you click on the timeline button, this talks about how we propose to sort of get from where we were in September until next September when we have the full rollout of Alice. And basically, if you look at March, you can see that our goal is as soon as we come back from February vacation to roll this out with staff. So we've got handouts ready to go. You're going to see all these in a minute, but everything is queued up and ready for staff. We want to inform staff first. And then the second thing to occur in March is the community information night. Now that is scheduled on March 20th, which is a board meeting night. It's at 6:00 at the high school. And so we thought if we did the community night, 6 to 7, and then the board can meet right after that. So that's the piece that I took liberty with, trying to figure out a night that would work for everybody.
And that is board reorganization.
And that's right. Michelle and I were talking that is the board reorganization. It's your first meeting after the election. And so I don't think it impacts. I think we just have our public meeting, community night. And basically we would have police, fire, and school district in the auditorium explaining to the community what we're doing, why we're doing it. We've met with police and fire because, there are, some could perceive that there's conflict with things that we're doing in an emergency. We have an active threat at a school. You're protecting life and limb. And so, there could be a violation of a fire code, for example, along the way. And so, we've talked about how do you deal with that conflict, right? And so the bottom line is you do what you have to protect yourselves. And then we can take care of it later on. So, but we want to make sure that we're all on the same page explaining that and having people understand what we're doing, what the training was, and what the protocol is. So once we've had that meeting with our community, we're going to finish up all our paperwork, emergency operation plans. Michelle was pointing out how much we have to write this summer and rewrite in order to get everything right. And then we'll implement in the fall full bore. And that's the point where we'll start to, age appropriately, have conversation with students about what we're doing and guiding them through what the ALICE protocols are.
Mike, when I read through it all, are you planning to do like active drills, desks, barricading with the kids, or?
So we haven't gotten that far yet as to whether we'll actually do that with the students. If you look at the paperwork that we have, it talks about it's age appropriate. So what we'll choose to do at the high school will differ from what we'll do at GMS. And we still have to kind of work our way through exactly what some of those protocols are.
We read scenarios over the inner speaker at my school, 3 different scenarios, and we discussed it as a class, what we would do.
And that's at the high school. Middle school level.
The high school went the one step further over at Alvern, and they went to an active scenario show.
I will say, when we were middle school 5 through 8, we did the actual drills, blocking, and the police tried to get in, and the discussions after what we could do better were pretty insightful on all the kids. I just think it did help.
I think part of what we're looking for is feedback from the community. We get major pushback from the community. I think we have to respond to that. We have to be aware of that. If people are saying, we don't like any of this conversation, but unfortunately, I'd rather that you're ready for it, right? So that'll guide us a little bit. So really, the community night will help plot the rest of the pass. And so then you have listed there's another timeline. It just lists everything out a little bit more specifically. There's a web announcement. So that's the presence that we propose to put on the website so that people in the community can access the information. There is a parent letter. That's the letter that's announcing this meeting on March 20th and goes into some detail for parents. That would go home with students after the break. So we'll get information out to probably in newsletters this week to kind of hold that date, what we're doing in terms of meeting time. And then the parent letter will go home after the break and after our staff have seen it. I think it's important our staff have an opportunity to see it first, and then we'll get it out to parents. There's a teacher instruction packet. I want you to read that thinking more like next year. That's where we're headed with the training. And then there's one more document called Litchfield Emergency Preparedness Parent Letter, and that's designed. That's the thing that you keep in your glove box. And so I'll give you an example. I went to check the weather the other day, which I do a lot lately, and there was an announcement that Bedford had dismissed the middle and high school in the middle of the day because of a threat.
Yeah.
So the concept of that preparedness letter is there's an evacuation at the high school. What do I do? And a parent can literally in the glove box of their car look at this and evacuation, stay away unless you're told to come, right? Because, if all of a sudden you have 400 parents, you actually could be making the situation worse, for example. So that sort of talks parents through, like, here's what we need you to do in order to make this as orderly and smooth as possible. So that's the lens on it. Totally open to any modification of these docs as we need going forward.
Did this come from us, or was this suggested
So most of these
provided?
documents have been procured in a variety of ways. Well, you get inspired by districts that have already done good work, right?
Great.
But then they've been
It saved
personalized
you a
to
lot of
us.
work.
Yeah.
So I think you might find a similar operation plan in Bedford, actually. Just saying.
Weird.
Are the teachers going to have flip charts in their room? Like,
We have a flip chart that says ALICE, and you can flip it up. It's required inside every door. It's just good I look at it just to double check.
We're actually working on the flip charts now.
Okay.
It's interesting because as you shift from sort of past training and
Mhm.
belief systems to new training, you really have to examine like every single
I
thing.
get confused from some of the old things you did and I have to double check.
We had
We used to have one in
The flip,
The green
emergency.
Yeah.
by the emergency stuff. We used to have a flip chart to kind of what code you were adhering to, but I don't know if it's still in there. I'd have to.
Yeah.
There should be one in every classroom.
I've seen
Because
that.
everyone was
Posted
so
on
you
the
get
wall.
familiar
On the
with
wall.
different
Are they green and
drills.
orange?
Yes.
But there was one in there one time.
but
And
the
there'll be
ones-
new ones by next year, so we will have them
Awesome.
updated.
And I'm sure the charts are good for reference,
Oh, absolutely.
but I don't
Especially
think it's good for if
50-year-olds.
something is actually happening.
Right.
True.
So I think it's more educating yourself prior to something happening.
Well, I'd be educated, just double check it.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point
As he's
too.
knocking on
Like,
the door.
we need, our substitute
Mhm.
teachers and, other professionals, not just the teachers. I think we fully trained all of our staff.
We have, but you're gonna have new staff coming in, so there's got to be some kind of
Right.
course that they're
Right.
gonna have to go
But
through.
I think our substitute teachers and, other people who might be there in an emergency and, they need to know that kind of thing too.
I think it might be,
The online piece, the certification piece that you go through before the trainings,
Yeah.
that's an annual basis.
Oh,
So
okay.
all of us that have taken the online
Yeah.
cert, as of July 1st, will have to
Do it again.
do it again to remain compliant with the ALICE program.
Okay.
and the other thing might be worthwhile too is we have a number of, say, new teachers or paras
Yeah.
that need to go through it.
Mhm.
If we have a local school that's gonna be going through it, to see if we can piggyback with them
To
to send
do the
those
training.
those
Yeah, that's a good
individuals.
idea.
Are all the teachers certified or just certain people?
All
The
staff.
one that you're just talking about, okay, all staff are
All
certified.
staff was.
And we have a provision for new teachers next year to make sure they get certified. We're looking to, I don't know if you just said this, but send somebody in-house to be a trainer so that we'll have somebody on staff to help with the training. So we're trying to make sure that if we're going to implement it, you have to implement correctly. You
Yeah.
can't
Right, and even
kind of sort of
part-time
Alice.
and stuff too.
Looks good.
So the board's okay with the 20th?
Yes.
Are you doing it at each school or all at once?
It would be in the auditorium at the high school.
So if you're going to our meeting,
It would be one community night and then we'll just go right into the boardroom to have our meeting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we will be moving it from here to there to accommodate that and driving all down here after.
So you'll send out an email to all the parents, like emergency protocols, like that would get my attention
Mhm.
for your students.
We'll get it out.
Mm.
So you think this rises more to like a blackboard than a,
I don't know.
you know what we may do is we'll get it in the newsletter
Mhm.
and then we'll just send a blackboard reminder as we get closer
Yeah.
so that it'll heighten it.
Mhm.
We can send a slide to cable too.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
That's
Yeah. Can we have cable record it too?
I'm sure Kate will be happy to record it. We're looking at
Cable?
cable. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll run it
Just
by
because I
Russ.
think it would be smart to have that so that parents who aren't able to
Oh,
make
absolutely.
it can watch it.
We should see if we can get our projector before then,
Right,
so that
right.
it can be projected onto cable.
We're going to need some sort of a PowerPoint anyway to
Yeah.
make it clear. So we'll work on that next. All right. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, well, that'll bring us to community forum. And we have no one from the community with us live. They'll go to school board comments. School board comments, anyone? All right. I'd like to touch on a topic that's come to, I think, my attention and to Tina's attention, and I know Dr. Jetty received it also. And that is a part of the volunteer handbook, which, is this just for GMS? Or is this,
It's it's
All schools.
district wide.
right? Because the situation came up and the question came up with GMS where they're a little unique because they have the Griffey store, which is run by volunteers. And it's run by volunteers that generally the parent will bring a child with them because it's normally like a 1 hour block or a 2 hour block that they're going to be manning the Griffey store. So in the past, it's always been that if they have a young child or more than one, they would bring them with them, sit them against the wall, run the store, and then leave. But in here, there are two things, I was talking to Scott today about it, that state, your full attention should be given to when you volunteer assignments, so please make child care arrangements for your young siblings and children. So that, and Corey, I don't know if you have an answer for this one, but the other part is in reference to insurance. All volunteers shall serve under the supervision and control of the school board for purposes of liability coverage. Volunteers are not covered by worker comp insurance. So one of the things that Heidi reached out to Tina and I, that it really ties their hands, because most parents can't get daycare or childcare for an hour here, an hour there, and it's always in the middle of the afternoon or late morning. And the way I read this and how I understood the guidelines for volunteers was more the classroom, field trips, and things like that. So what I'd like to do is throw it out there and have discussion, and then we can come back to it afterwards, but possibly make a provision for at least the Griffey store that their children can come in. But I also want to find out the insurance part of it. They've always done it in the past, so I'm not certain if there would be any problem with it.
They're only in the front vestibule area, right? It's not like they're running around in classrooms.
No, that's just it.
Yeah.
And some children are still in, like, baby strollers. I mean, I remember Zoe, like, bring
I
her in.
remember Zoe with her, just bring her with some Cheerios and.
Yeah. But I mean, it's to the point where they have to close the store because they have no one to run it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the same kind of situation where if I'm going in to do an assignment in a classroom and I'm bringing a couple of children with me,
Right.
that it's gonna be a little bit more disruptive than someone just in the vestibule right there just
agree.
trying to do it.
I think the store would close if we don't do something like this. 'cause
It's already
they're
been
already
closed.
always struggling for
Well,
volunteers.
Because of that?
Well, the people that have been running it have been sick or their kids are sick, so they haven't been able to make it. So it's been closed most of the last, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks. There's been no store. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that insurance isn't an issue, that we can just make an amendment to this particular thing, possibly for the Griffey store. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it or.
Well, I mean, this is one specific, and I think then there'll be the next thing that somebody will say. So,
Right.
even a general, exceptions can be made by the principal on a case-by-case basis or something to that effect, because then we just open it up beyond the Griffey store and we allow the principal. And obviously, the principal would need to consult with our office to make sure, Primex is okay with it, or what have you, so.
Do you want it to be stated as far as the principal to make that decision or the superintendent? Because most decisions like that, as far as in the buildings, goes through the superintendent.
Yeah, I mean, it could be an exception by me. I'm okay with that because I know how to check with Primex pretty easily. So.
And I'm sure the principals would check with you.
Yep.
So if we can find out from Primex, and can we bring this forward to the next meeting?
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't think Primex was ever an issue when we decided to have children not in the classroom. I think it was more as far as disruption that may have taken place.
And I would think too, the principal could always say, listen, your kids are a distraction and,
Right.
it's affecting our environment, or, have a word with the parent if it's really not working out. I think for the most part, parents for whom it's not working out kind of figure out that's not working out. So
I think they know, right?
yeah, yeah.
And the thing is that they're so isolated. They're in a hallway, and generally all they're getting, the kids going out for recess.
Right.
So
They're
each
playing
class,
with a little Matchbox car in the corner, minding their own business.
Right.
I agree.
Well, that's why I like the case-by-case piece. I mean,
Yeah.
my children are very active and they're present. I know that
Me too.
there was that in my previous office there, I'd be like, oh, when did you get here? I've been here all day. I'm like, really? Is that what that looks like? So you never quite know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
case-by-case is really important.
So you can tell Mr. Thompson that he can approve some people to do the Griffey store?
As soon as we check with Primex,
then
we'll bring it back here
the next meeting
and,
and just
the
and
next
just put
meeting.
down, that it may be exceptions, and the superintendent will make those decisions on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and I'll definitely do it in consult with the principal. I mean,
Yeah.
In fact, that's probably how I would learn of it. So anyway, good.
Thank you. So I'll bring us, we have public minutes from February 6, 2019 for approval.
Brian, we had on the written agenda, the HLN letter, which I'm not seeing on the, where the heck is it? Yeah, it's not here, but I just wanted to make sure,
Wasn't sure if he wanted to talk about it or not.
So
Yeah, that's fine.
Tina and Brian had sent the letter, so I just want to make sure everybody else knows of it before you read it. And we'll make a link for that.
Oh, you want to just read it?
I don't know if we need to read it or pass it around. What would you?
We can just pass around.
Is it from both of us? You're welcome.
Basically what it is, I'll pass it down first. I think between Michelle and Tina, on first read of the HLN article from the deliberative session, there were quite a few blaring errors that we just wanted to clarify. So we sent a letter to the HLN asking them to put in the corrections. Let's see, in a second, I'll just highlight with arrow and give a response and you can look at it. The first one was reference to the turnout,
Yes.
that it was a low turnout. What we asked is that they put in a statement that it may have been a low turnout, but it's been more than what it's been in the past. Although, the school board would like to see the entire town there. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, but it was encouraging to see more people there this year than they had been in the past. And they were just different references, different warrant articles, like HLN Article 2. Stated in HLN that teacher after teacher approached the microphone to express displeasure with the budget committee vote, where actually there were only a couple of teachers who came up. So there was like situations like that throughout the article that weren't quite accurate,
Right.
that we just asked for clarification. And then like the last one on the budget, where I stated that we've been going up approximately a little bit over 2%. The town's been going up 8%. They put it in as the budget committee's budget went up 8%. So just some inaccuracies like that. So hopefully they'll print that in the next edition of the HLN as far as corrections. Did you want to add anything to that, Tina?
I mean, everything's kind of in the letter. I think the most glaring one for me was the, they called the longevity stipend salary increase,
Right.
which is different because that would compound up year after year and be a much higher cost to the district. So I think it's important to be accurate.
So I just added a link to your agenda. So if you're reading it online, you have a link now to the article, to the letter. So yes.
Thanks.
So now we'll go to our minutes. February 6, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 6th.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. And we have meetings from February 9th, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve those too.
And I will second it as well.
Excellent. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Motion carries 500. Now we'll go on to budget transfers. Is there any questions on budget transfers?
Do you want any questions? What was wrong with the tractor? What was wrong with the tractor?
It's been having several repairs recently, actually. I know there's
Okay.
a hydraulic pump in it that actually broke recently too, that's actually being fixed.
Because that thing, they use that a lot.
What's that?
They use that thing a lot.
Mhm.
I'm just curious.
Which tractor?
The Kubota one.
Oh.
See? that's my homework.
Is there a motion to accept the budget transfers?
I'll do it. I'll make a motion to accept the answers.
Second.
Rob seconded it.
Rob, second. Any discussion? Or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Do you have anything else, Corey, this evening?
Aside from my report.
That you sent us.
Well, you're up then.
All right. Just to give an update on the projects associated with the school infrastructure fund from the state. The vestibule at GMS is approaching completion. I asked Dave to reach out to the vendor to get a timeline for the installation for the main entrance sign. That's the last piece, and then that project will be done. The vestibule at CHS, I asked Dave to reach out to the general contractor to see if we can get that on the docket for July, August timeframe to get that work completed. And then the project at LMS, they capped our award at 100,000, which isn't enough. So I think we're going to have additional discussions on where that additional funding come from, be it fund balance, capital reserve, where we want to do that in order to achieve that project. All that being said, those awards, I've filed an extension the other day with the state to make sure that we retain access to that money until December of 2020. So we have time to finish these things out.
So we're getting like less than a third of what the project would cost.
Yeah, they said on that round on the projects they capped 100,000 was the highest they gave on this round. There is the potential that after the April 1st deadline, if extensions aren't put in or money isn't spent and money gets put back into the pot, that they'll reallocate. So there is a potential that we could ask for additional funding towards it. That might help a little bit, but like I said, we have some time to work towards it. The state, February of 2018, put out a SB 247 to do lead water testing in all school buildings where water is available for consumption by kids. That testing is due by July 1st of this year. We have completed it already, and we are below all the state standards, so we're all set to go. So I believe we have to submit that report to the state. And then after this, we have to retest every 5 years. So heading in the right direction there.
Are we on Pennachuck water?
We do.
So doesn't Pennachuck test that?
I'm sure they do, but the law requires us to test it anyway.
Pennachuck will test what they're delivering up to your building.
Mhm.
We have to test what's coming out of our spouts. So if there were to be a lead problem within the building, we have to show that we're taking
Do
action.
we have any of those fancy water bubblers at the high school? The nice
Not yet.
ones? Not yet?
Not yet. We're working on it. We actually did receive some funding to work towards that. So I know
mean the water
that's
bottle
something
ones?
that Dave is
Yeah.
working on.
They're just, it's amazing.
Big difference.
Yeah, they have them all over my school, and it counts how many water bottles they save.
Dave's working on it. We actually
Is
do
it?
have the funding to do it. We just the installation piece. We're trying to get that all
I would
hammered
like to
out.
see those in the
Somebody-
lunch-rooms too. I mean, how many of our kids spend $1 a day on water? It gets so
Fine.
expensive.
GMS has it.
GMS,
GMS
I know
has two
LMS
of
does
them, I
not,
believe.
They still
right?
spend it.
They still spend it.
Even
Right.
if you-
It'll just be on Pop-Tarts.
And Gatorade.
Yeah.
All right. I did provide within this year-to-date financials for all funds, general fund, food service, grants, and the capital projects funds. The full-day kindergarten project is officially closed. We're done with that. So that was closed out by the appropriated transfer from the general fund to close out that
Not
project.
all of it.
What's that?
Saw the fence.
That's completely separate.
Yeah.
The fence was the security warrant article from the
Okay.
previous year that we carried forward. So we still have that money. So I actually have Dave looking into getting that company in so we can plan it out and get that done once the ground is thawed. All the financials in here, I'll give, I did put a disclaimer in my report. Anyone's looking at it that this is mid-February. The fund balance the unassigned portion is still looking high at this point. Things change. Revenues come in shorter, all those types of things. So we do have opportunities to fund some of those things that we took out of the operating budget during budget season to get some of those things done. But we could also use this consideration for doing the LMS canopy if we wanted to. So those options look like they are going to be available to us and still be able to return towards tax rate. Not as much as we have in the past, but enough to offset or keep the tax relatively stable. We did do, I put in food service, which currently they're showing a loss, but there's investment going into that program. There's also, we changed a couple of the positions to full-time that were previously part-time, and they picked up insurance. As we move forward, and I've seen it in Goffstown when I worked there, it's not uncommon to see certain months throughout the year where you're at a loss for the year, and that will recover as we get through these next couple months with local sales and such. She is doing a couple more things with the program, which would be kind of interesting. She's talking about starting up a coffee bar in the entranceway of the high school, which will be nice. And she's talking about bringing in
Should someone say coffee bar?
the ticket booth. So as you come in the front door, she's going to take.
No.
And more than talking about it, we've cleared out the ticket booth. It was a storage room. So you can actually put the thing up.
The
It's called
ticket booth
Deja Brew.
Where it takes
You'll be
the
able to
left
stop by
go
and
to
get your coffee
SAU.
in the morning.
It's even named.
You mean
That
when you
seems
walk
familiar.
in where the dress code thing is?
No, the ticket booth right in front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, it says a dress code list
Yeah,
thing right.
there is.
I
There's-
think there might be a restaurant down in Boston.
There's a thing with dress
We
code.
don't have to
Do you think
trademark
Sherry
it.
keeps stuff in there?
We're not talking the
awesome.
front door, right? We're talking the
Yeah.
cap door.
No, the main door.
The front door.
I mean, there's a ticket booth. There's a metal screen that goes up, and a little morning coffee bar right there.
If
Right near the
you're-
main
if you're
office.
walking
Before you take the
in
left
straight
down to
ahead,
the-
right
I
next
might
to
never
the-
It's got a
seen
sign.
that.
It's got a big sign up in it that says SAU this way.
And there's a dress code list
That's
right in front of it, yeah.
Oh.
Staffed
Be
by
there.
volunteers.
She was just noticing
Trying to
that
get some of
you
that
know,
Dunkin'
every
Donuts
morning
money.
they come through
Yeah.
the door with Dunks and
Right.
Starbucks or whatever.
I saw a long time ago to put a Starbucks inside the
Yeah.
learning common.
Well, this
Still
will be
think we
even
should.
better.
Oh, so Lauren's trying.
Yep.
Will that be staffed by volunteers? Could be.
Will they be selling
I think
donuts
it'd
and
be
cookies?
staffed by her.
Staffed by
I think it's gonna be in the morning. I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think
Oh,
it's gonna be
that's
open
true,
all
yeah.
day. It's gonna
No.
be in the morning.
No, it's like a half hour in the morning.
And she probably one of the kitchen staff will.
And she
will
said,
staff it.
I asked about that, is there a federal requirement? Are we allowed to sell caffeinated beverages? And she said, there's nothing.
Yeah, and the funny thing in that is that you can serve Diet Coke. You can sell Diet Coke in the school if you want to. You can't sell regular Coke because they don't care about the caffeine. It's the sugar.
It's a sugar, which doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
The federal requirements are a little odd in that. I think probably,
Huh.
but
I thought the school policy was no liquids that weren't clear and see-through.
I do remember that discussion.
You can't see through milk.
Used to be, but
But
You can't take it out of the cafeteria though.
it was just,
I think it was
I think it
clear
was
liquids
purchased in
out
the
of
school, isn't it?
anywhere but the
Different than if it's
cafeteria.
being brought in.
I don't know, I just thought I remember.
Within the school, you're reasonably certain about the contents.
That makes
Okay,
It's brought in from outside.
kids walk in with coffee.
Oh, I know they do.
Is there a distinction there?
I don't know.
It's one of those things.
Carries around that can of water now too. What's that thing? What are those things called?
Hydro flasks.
Hydro flask. Well, I mean, you don't know what's
That
inside.
might be
Can
something.
of water.
That might be,
What it is. Sounds like a little tank when they roll around in your car.
like that might be something to look if it is in the student handbook, crossing it out if that's the case. Because we're
Look at
not
that.
enforcing it. Why have it?
Yeah, and she's worked towards looking at the policies for food service and things within the handbooks because there's to find consistency to make sure all three buildings have consistent things in there for the school lunch program. So she's working towards that. The list is kind of long,
Yeah.
but she's working towards it.
There's no chewing gum.
You see now egg and cheese sausage sandwiches.
Oh, right.
She's already doing those for breakfast.
I
I mean, first thing in the morning, right there at the coffee bar.
Tommy gets one
Absolutely,
every
grab and go.
morning.
Yeah.
He leaves your class probably to get one, or
Yeah.
left your class.
Can't
to
have
get one every
donuts.
morning.
Wait, who?
My son gets a breakfast sandwich every morning.
Well, I don't have them anymore.
I know, but you used to let him go. Because not a hungry Tommy is a happy Tommy.
All the financials are in there. If anyone has any questions on any of that, just let me know. There is pretty much an explanation of how every designation of fund balance is categorized and what they're used for and all that. So last piece is Plotzik and Sanderson in the letter to the board mentioned some areas of the student activity funds and procedures and how we can tighten things up there. So I'm working towards that. I've updated the activity funds in my tracking, which I do for the audit each year. So when they come into audit, I can just provide them a full detail of it. I've updated that through January 31st of 2019. I'm going to start going through individual account balances and reaching out to the principals and seeing, okay, what are specific accounts used for? If this balance is in there, why is it carrying forward from year to year? Are there certain things we could use it for? So I will be looking into that over the next couple months. And then I think my last piece was the fencing, but that had come up previously. So if anyone has any questions?
Thank you very much.
Yep.
You're back on. 2018-21 goals.
Yes, so we actually, I thought we approved the goals and we're good to go, and then we realized we never actually voted on our goals, and so they're hanging out there. Um,
I thought we had.
So I think we were gonna, I was gonna take him to the principals. So we were close to approving him and then said, let me just take him to the principals and make sure. Did that, but then we never brought him back. So
Did they have any input?
they were fine.
They, very minor.
Okay.
Very minor.
I think there were a couple of minor tweaks, but overarching, okay.
Mhm.
So at this point, this is what we have and have developed. So just looking for a vote and then
I'll make a motion to accept the 2018-21 goals.
I'll second it.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I don't know if any of you got a chance to see.
They were quite
45
in-depth.
pages.
But I thought
Yes.
they were fabulous.
Yeah.
I only read like 14 pages, but the ones I saw were really, really good.
Well, I think
I read all 45.
Did you?
I did too. And some of it I liked. Some of it was just too wordy
Overkill, yeah.
and just too. It was just too convoluted. What I liked was the clear mission statements and the indicators for how this is, and the actions. We're going to do this. Teachers are going to do this. The administrators
That's
are going
what
to
I
do this.
I think we can do something along that lines. You could also take like the goals, these goals, and do the exact same thing and break
Right.
them out.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like we need to have something approved, but I do want to.
And a measurement and a follow through and
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
and I think 3 years. I mean, I'm assuming that we go with 3 years because that's the election cycle. That's how long the terms are.
yeah, but doesn't mean that come next year you can't change your goals or refocus on a different goal.
Right. No, I think that's fine, but
Or add to it.
would be better served having a longer term vision? Kind of where do we see our schools in 5 years? Where do we need to be, and how do we need to get there? Or 10 years. I mean, that's how businesses operate, right? They don't go with by year 3. They look long term, and I think we should start looking long term because we have a lot of goals, with facilities and limiting yourself to 3 years to get those achievements done is a very short amount of time, and things tend to get kicked to the next time, after
No, I
these
think-
3 years, we'll kick them.
Yeah, I think that's why it's
That
important too. Like look at them every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's where we are in our 3-year goal. Do we need to like refocus on something else? We need to add something to that.
Mhm.
So I think it's just kind of like a rolling 3 years. That's kind of how I see it. I mean,
Okay.
what you're approving right now is like the foundation of your goals, but then you can just keep adding to it or changing them as need be.
Also, if we add time,
underneath this. Like how we can do that.
also if we add timelines to them, some of them are just going to naturally be longer than 3 years.
Yeah.
Michelle has developed some documents that look at that in a more
I created-
comprehensive charting
I
manner.
created a
Okay.
Gantt chart with timed out.
Yeah.
And what I learned about goals doing this for 15 years is, and I think Dr. Cutler was the one that put it best. Do what you can attain in a short period of time. Start a trend. Work on a strategic plan.
Right, but I've only been on the board for 3 years, but we don't have a strategic plan.
We did with her.
Yeah.
We
I
did
think
with
it's
her.
time to start a new strategic plan. After
And I
this
think it was a
election,
5-year plan, I believe. So
5 years.
That's familiar.
Yeah, there's a couple of points, and my view on the goals is different today than 6 months ago. So as I've sort of gotten a better handle on the
Mhm.
district, I kind of have a different thought.
Okay.
So I think we can get a lot more strategic in the way we go after stuff.
I've also
But it
heard
doesn't necessarily upset these goals.
Right.
It just complements the goals.
When we first started discussing these goals, probably 9 months ago when I first joined, I think that it was discussed at one point that the principals have long range goals, like they have long range budgets. And so like, I don't know if those are formal documents, but I've not, I don't think those have come to us. But those that's a great working document to look at and to think about.
Go ahead.
And then just my other part is after I read the document that you shared, they used a committee to develop that.
Yeah.
And I would be very much in favor of something like that.
Well, we talked about that when we first were talking about the goals about getting a committee together.
And they started by talking with the community and really getting what the community wanted to see in their schools,
Mm-hmm.
and what should be included in the long range plan, which I think is really important. That was kind of, they let the community set the stage for.
That's what Dr. Cutler did.
Mhm.
Her second year in, she held community meetings at each school, and had these, believe it or not, these we call easel-sized paper things up all over the wall, and we had certain kinds of not guided goals, but ideas for people to comment on, and people went around and wrote what their priorities were, and they actually wrote suggestions, and that's how we started crafting our strategic plan that time and the goals going forward, because the goals that the district had or the board had before that were really very lofty and totally unattainable. So you've got to have realistic, attainable goals.
I think along with what you said, I'm looking at under love of learning, strengthen and enhance pathways for students who may not want to go to college. How? Like, I don't see, how is that going to happen?
This is not an action plan.
This is a
This is
higher
just
level
a-
document.
yeah.
Exactly. It needs to be turned into actions.
So but I do think that we need to have a strategic plan and an action plan that comes from this.
I agree.
Is that
Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, that's clearly, this has to guide that
Yeah.
next part. Mary and Bill and I met with a parent group that's been pretty active. And, one of the focal points for that group are the non-college bound
Right.
students.
Mhm.
And so there's a group with a ton of ideas, right? So now we just have to capture it all.
All right,
How are we going to increase community involvement?
I've been trying for
I
3
know.
years?
Maybe this.
But they only had 60 members on their community.
Well, that was my first thought. I know 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, so you finished it, now is it just in a binder in everybody's classroom or in everybody's, 45-page document? How often is it being looked at? How often is it being
Right.
looked
How
that was
do they
my-
communicate it out?
And that was my first thought when I read it. I'm reading when the completion dates were and who was responsible for
Yeah.
doing it. But it is a hefty document.
Yeah.
Like,
That's why when I looked at it, it's the first thing,
Yeah.
being a teacher, the first thing
No, and I
you
don't
throw it on your
think
desk.
we
you're
need
like,
to include.
It's funny, they have a 45-page document as far as goals, yet their mission statement's 6 words.
Smart, right?
Yeah.
Smart goal.
All right.
But I agree that we just need to get something a little bit more elaborate.
Just to touch on the strategic plan, I was reading through the replies to your posting.
Mhm.
And I did like I don't remember who posted on there about, they'd like to see a long range goal instead of Band-Aids for our schools, making our schools. And I will say, I have to give them credit. The district I work in, the schools are beautiful. They're old, but 3 years from now, they're replacing a roof on that building.
Yeah.
They're doing, it's preventative maintenance, not Band-Aids. And
Yeah.
I know it's expensive, but I guess in the
And
long
I,
run, it's
and I
probably
think we need
less.
to be more proactive instead of like,
That's a good, yeah. That's a good platform. I like that.
oh, thanks.
I'll
You
vote for
vote
you.
for me.
In order to be proactive rather than reactive, you need money to do that.
Yeah. But I know, but
So if you have
silly,
a fund of $1 million or $2 million, then it's easy to be proactive.
but silly, little things like, every 3 years your classroom's getting painted. You leave after the 3rd year, every classroom in the district every 3 years. So, they're not all in the same, it's different wings, but things like that you'd like to see in a long range plan, because if you keep buildings up, it's, you find the problems easier and can plan for them.
Mhm. We'll get there. All right.
Our goals.
So we have a first and a second.
Facilities.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed, abstain. That'll bring us to the manifest. Any questions? We have signatures. All set? Yep.
Good try.
Community forum. Again, nobody in the community is here live. So that'll bring us to non-public. RSA 91-A:311. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or disciplining of such employee with the investigation of any charges against him unless the employer affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case a request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person or public employee. C, matters which if discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any persons other than a member of the body of the agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
I forgot
Yes.
the response.
Yes.
Or non-public?